Welcome to Zoe Stories. Kidnapped and forced to become a girl. I never imagined that my life could change in an instant. One moment, I was just another ordinary guy, living in my small apartment in the city, working long hours at the office, trying to keep my head above water. The next, everything I thought I knew about myself, my identity, and my freedom was ripped away, leaving me in a world I didn't recognize. One where every reflection in the mirror reminded me of a person I wasn't prepared to become. My name is Alex, and I've always been a careful man. Careful with my appearance, careful with my words, careful with my feelings. I had secrets, like everyone else, but mine were personal, intimate, and thrilling in a way that made my heart race every time I even thought about them. I've always been fascinated by cross-dressing, not as a joke or a fleeting whim, but as a way to explore a side of myself that felt fragile, delicate, and secretly powerful. At first, it was just at home, behind closed doors. A skirt, a wig, a soft sweater, small things that let me breathe as someone completely different. But the problem, the danger, was that I had someone in my life who could shatter this secret at any moment. Mia, my girlfriend. Mia was beautiful in a way that made people stop mid-sentence. Sharp, intelligent, and demanding of perfection, she had this uncanny ability to see through masks, both literal and figurative. I loved her, but I also feared her judgment. She didn't know about my secret world, and I wasn't ready for her to know. That secret was mine, a fragile thread I clung to in the chaos of my daily life. My apartment was modest but cozy, with warm lighting and the faint smell of vanilla candles I had bought for Mia on one of our early dates. It was my safe space, the only place I could truly be myself without fear. The bedroom, in particular, had become my sanctuary. A small corner held a carefully organized collection of dresses, tights, and accessories. I'd spent hours arranging them by color, texture, and mood. My reflection in the mirror wasn't just a reflection. It was a portal, a temporary escape from the pressures of reality. That night, I had finished a long day at work, my mind buzzing with reports, emails, and the monotony of office life. Mia had gone to visit her parents, leaving me alone with the apartment and the quiet thrill of my secret. I felt a familiar pull in my chest, a mixture of excitement and fear. Tonight, I would allow myself to become her. Not Mia exactly, but the person she imagined when she teased me about trying on her clothes. Tonight, I would cross a line I had never dared to before. I started with the outfit, carefully selecting a silky blouse and a black skirt that clung to my hips in just the right way. My hands trembled as I slipped into the clothes, the fabric cool against my skin. There was a strange sensation in the mirror, a tug at my identity, as I adjusted the blouse and smoothed the skirt. Every fold, every curve, felt like a betrayal and a revelation all at once. I applied makeup slowly, deliberately, tracing my cheekbones, filling my lips with a subtle color, painting my eyes with soft shades that made my gaze look bigger, more vulnerable, more feminine. As I stared at myself, I couldn't help but marvel at the transformation. My reflection looked back at me with wide eyes and a tentative smile. For a brief moment, I forgot that I was Alex, the careful, cautious man who hid his desires. I became someone else entirely, someone daring, fragile, and intoxicatingly free. Yet, beneath the thrill, a whisper of fear crawled through my thoughts. What if Mia came home early? What if someone found out? The excitement that made my pulse quicken also sent shivers down my spine. I sat on the edge of my bed, legs crossed, heels tapping nervously against the floor. My phone buzzed with a message from Mia, but instead of relief, a knot tightened in my stomach. "Have fun tonight," it read. How could she have known how close I was to losing myself in this moment? I didn't dare reply, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as my heart raced. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating, but so was the fear of exposure. I thought about my life before Mia, before the apartment, before the little sanctuary I had built for myself. I remembered nights alone in my childhood bedroom, experimenting with my mother's old makeup, feeling the stirrings of something I didn't fully understand. Those moments had been fleeting, hidden, and shameful, but they were mine. Now, years later, the urge to relive them had returned with a force I couldn't resist. And tonight, it was different. Tonight, I was crossing a threshold I hadn't even realized existed, a threshold that would soon be forced open, brutally and irrevocably, by events I could never have anticipated. As I took a deep breath, smoothing my hair under the wig, I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was a strange mix of exhilaration and dread, as if some invisible force was watching, waiting for the exact moment to change my life forever. Little did I know, that moment had already arrived. In a matter of hours, my world would be turned upside down. My secret would no longer be mine, and I would find myself facing a reality that I could never have imagined, trapped in a body and life I never asked for. But for now, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, legs crossed, heart racing, marveling at the reflection that stared back at me. It was just the beginning. The morning sun spilled across the quiet streets, painting everything in a deceptive calm. Birds chirped, joggers ran past, and the city seemed perfectly ordinary. But I knew better. Deep down, I felt the tension coiling in my chest like a spring ready to snap. Today was different. Today, I wasn't just crossing the line. I was being dragged over it. I walked quickly, trying to ignore the unease that had settled over me like a heavy fog. My backpack felt heavier than usual, though it was empty except for few essentials. I kept my head down, blending into the crowd of commuters, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might notice how tense I was. It wasn't paranoia, or maybe it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The truth was, my life had been a careful balance of secrets and routines. I was Alex, ordinary by most standards, an office worker, punctual, polite, mostly unnoticed. But beneath that ordinary exterior, I carried a secret obsession that had been with me for years. Cross-dressing. It was a part of me I explored in private, a thrill I indulged in when no one was watching. Dresses, skirts, makeup, it was my escape, my way of feeling something entirely different. Normally, mornings were mundane. Coffee, breakfast, the commute. But today, I had been intercepted. I hadn't even noticed the van parked a little too close to the curb, the tinted windows reflecting nothing but the pale morning light. A hand had reached out, grabbing me as I stepped onto the sidewalk, pulling me into the vehicle before I could even scream. The inside of the van was dark, the windows blacked out. Panic surged, but it was accompanied by something else, an undeniable thrill I couldn't ignore. My heart hammered in my chest as the van lurched forward, weaving through the quiet streets. Whoever had taken me didn't speak at first, just watched silently as I struggled against the restraints. "You don't need to fight," a voice said finally, smooth and chilling. "You're going to understand soon enough." I froze, recognizing immediately the authority in the tone. There was no hesitation, no room for negotiation. Fear wrapped around me like a shroud, suffocating yet electrifying. I realized that everything I had hidden, my obsession, my secret explorations, was about to be pulled into the light. And I was powerless to stop it. The van slowed and stopped in front of a building I didn't recognize, its facade cold and industrial. Steel and glass reflected the rising sun, and the sterile environment made my stomach twist. They opened the back doors, forcing me inside. It wasn't a home, it wasn't an apartment, it was a lab, or at least something that smelled like one. Antiseptic, metal, and something else I couldn't quite name, something sharp that made my skin prickle. I was led to a chair, strapped in. My pulse thundered in my ears. The restraints were tight, deliberately uncomfortable, designed to make me squirm, to make me submit. The man, or maybe it was more than one, moved with efficiency, checking dials, glancing at screens, all without a word. "You've lived a double life," he said finally, as if reading my thoughts. "Hidden desires, private experiments, little indulgences no one knew about. That ends today." I swallowed hard, panic mixing with an odd sense of anticipation. How could he know? How could anyone know what I had kept so carefully hidden for so long? And then the words came, soft and horrifying. "You're going to become her. And there's no going back." My stomach dropped. I didn't understand yet, but the fear was instantaneous. Her, I croaked. What do you mean? The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, a tray of clothes and accessories was placed in front of me. Skirts, stockings, makeup, delicate shoes. My breath caught in my throat. These were my kinds of clothes, my forbidden indulgences, now presented as an ultimatum. You will wear them, the voice continued, calm, methodical. You will change. You will learn what it is to be someone else completely. And you will like it, or you will suffer the consequences. I stared at the items, the soft fabrics, the pale makeup, the shoes that would elevate me unnaturally. A knot formed in my throat. My hands shook as I reached for them, caught between rebellion and curiosity. My mind raced. How did it come to this? How did my secret life become my prison? I tried to resist. My fingers fumbled with the blouse, pulling it against my chest awkwardly. The sensation of fabric against skin was electric, more intimate than I had expected. Panic twisted with a thrill that made my heart pound in my ears. My reflection in the polished steel of a nearby table stared back at me, not Alex, but something else, something fragile and trembling. They watched me, silent, patient, almost clinical. Every motion I made, every breath I took, was scrutinized. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before, more vulnerable than when I had been alone experimenting in my room. And yet, there was an undeniable rush to it, a twisted sense of liberation. Good, the voice said. Now, the transformation begins. They handed me a wig. The strands fell over my shoulders as I placed it over my head, adjusting it carefully. Every touch, every adjustment, felt like a surrender, a step further away from the person I used to be. The makeup followed, each stroke deliberate. Eyes, lips, cheeks. I could feel the change not just in appearance, but in something deeper, more psychological. I wanted to fight, to resist, but the fear of what might happen if I refused was paralyzing. And yet a small, guilty part of me thrilled at the sensation. The delicate fabrics, the soft brush of makeup, the way my body began to feel different. More aware, more fragile, more alive in ways I hadn't anticipated. By the time I finished, I didn't recognize the reflection in the mirror. Someone else stared back at me, someone beautiful, vulnerable, and utterly powerless. And I realized, with a sinking stomach, that my life as Alex, the careful, cautious man, was over. Today, I would learn what it truly meant to be someone else. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, then settled into a steady hum, casting a harsh, clinical glow over the room. The man who had taken me didn't speak. He simply gestured toward a second tray, this one filled with more delicate garments, lacy stockings, skirts with layers of soft chiffon, tiny shoes that seemed impossibly fragile. Each piece was carefully arranged, as if he wanted me to see every detail, to understand that there was no escape. I hesitated, trembling. My hands hovered over the clothes, and the reality hit me like ice water. I had no choice. Every instinct screamed to run, to fight, to resist, but the restraints in the chair made any physical rebellion futile. Panic and frustration swirled in my chest. And yet, underneath the terror, a strange current of curiosity and forbidden excitement began to creep in, unbidden. Start, the voice said softly. There is no turning back. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, as I pulled the chiffon skirt over my legs. The sensation of fabric brushing against my thighs was surreal. My heart hammered in my chest, not from the motion itself, but from what it symbolized. With each movement, I was stepping further away from Alex, the cautious man I had been, and inching toward someone else entirely, someone fragile, delicate, exposed. The stockings were next. Sliding them up over my legs felt intimate in a way that made my stomach twist. The material clung to me, accentuating curves I had only glimpsed in the mirror at home. The thrill of it mingled with terror, the knowledge that someone was watching, controlling, guiding me into a persona I hadn't chosen but was being forced to embody. Then came the blouse, soft and sheer, brushing over my shoulders as I slipped it on. My reflection in the polished steel of the table, or perhaps the small mirror on the tray, stared back at me, and I barely recognized the face. The wig framed my features perfectly, soft strands brushing against my cheeks. My eyes, accentuated with carefully applied shadow, looked larger, more vulnerable. Lips painted a muted pink completed the transformation. I couldn't breathe, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming sensation of change. I had always experimented alone, in secret, and the thrill had always been tempered by control. Now, control had been ripped from me. Every movement, every brush of fabric, every glance at my reflection reminded me that I was no longer entirely my own person. The man, or perhaps he was more, watched silently as I adjusted the final details. The shoes were tight, delicate, and unfamiliar, forcing me to balance carefully. Each step I took on the smooth floor echoed in the room, making me hyper-aware of my vulnerability. A small part of me hated it, yet another part, a part one hadn't dared acknowledge, thrilled at the sensation of being so carefully observed, so deliberately transformed. "You look different," the voice said finally, almost approvingly. "But this is only the beginning." I tried to respond, to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. Panic had given way to something else, an odd mix of shame, excitement, and anticipation. The restraints had been removed, but I felt no safer. Every movement, every glance at the reflection, reminded me that I was in a state of permanent scrutiny. "Now," the voice continued, "you will learn what it is to live in this body, in this identity. There is no room for resistance." They guided me to a full-length mirror, and I froze. The person staring back at me was almost unrecognizable. The lines of my face softened, my shoulders narrower, my stance more delicate. The dress clung to curves I had never fully noticed on my own body. My hands, small and trembling, reached up to touch my cheeks, my lips, the smooth strands of the wig. Each touch reinforced the undeniable truth. Alex was slipping away. A strange sensation washed over me. Vulnerability mixed with exhilaration, fear intertwined with a thrill I had never experienced in my secret moments alone. My reflection wasn't just a reflection, it was a mirror of possibility, a glimpse of someone else's life forced upon me. And as much as I wanted to fight, I couldn't ignore the addictive rush of it. Then came the next challenge, walking. The shoes, delicate and high, forced me to adjust my posture, to sway my hips in a way that felt unnatural yet intoxicating. Each step was a lesson, each misstep a reminder of how exposed I was. The man, or observer, smiled faintly, noting every falter, every hesitation. "You'll get used to it," he said. "Eventually, you'll forget who you were before this." The words were like a knife twisting in my chest. Forget who I was? Lose myself entirely? I shook my head, trying to resist, but a small, guilty thrill coursed through me. I had always wanted to immerse myself completely in this other identity, but never like this. Never under coercion, under surveillance, under the watchful eyes of someone who controlled every detail. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time felt distorted in that sterile room. Every adjustment, every brush of fabric, every careful step became a ritual of transformation. I found myself studying the reflection with a mix of fascination and horror. I was beautiful, delicate, almost fragile. And yet, I was terrified of what this transformation truly meant. Then came the first test. They handed me a tray of accessories, necklaces, bracelets, a small clutch. "You will carry yourself as her," the voice said. "You will move, speak, and behave as she would. Every action is observed. Every mistake has consequences." I hesitated, my hands trembling as I reached for the clutch. I had never imagined being forced into such complete immersion. It wasn't just clothes or makeup, it was identity itself. Every nuance, every gesture, every expression was being dictated, measured, and enforced. I felt both exhilarated and suffocated, a paradox that made my pulse race and my stomach churn. By the time I had completed the exercises, walking, adjusting, holding accessories, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. But the most profound transformation had already occurred. Internally. Fear, shame, excitement, and a strange sense of liberation had collided within me, creating a tension that left me trembling. I was Alex in name only. Everything else had been rewritten, forced into someone else's design. And in that moment, as I stared at my reflection, fragile, delicate, almost unrecognizable, I realized the truth. I was no longer just a man experimenting in private. I was a person reborn in someone else's image, caught between desire and coercion, thrill and terror. And there was no turning back. The room seemed smaller now, the walls closing in as panic and anticipation coursed through me like electricity. Every movement I made was deliberate, each step watched, every breath monitored. I was no longer just Alex, I was her, or at least the person they wanted me to be. My reflection confirmed it. Delicate features, soft curves, the carefully applied makeup emphasizing eyes wide with fear. But my mind was still Alex's, wrestling with terror and a thrill I couldn't name. The man, he had a name, but I didn't know it, stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "Today, you will leave this room," he said, almost casually. "You will interact with the world as she would. Any hesitation, any slip will have consequences." I froze. Leave? Go outside like this? Into a world that would never understand, never forgive, never accept? My hands trembled as I adjusted the skirt, the delicate fabric brushing over my legs. The heels clicked sharply on the floor, each step a painful reminder of my vulnerability. My heart thudded so loudly, I thought they must hear it. "You can do this," he added, "or you can suffer." I swallowed, trying to ignore the tight knot of fear in my stomach. Slowly, painfully, I stepped toward the door. Each movement felt surreal, like I was walking through a dream where every detail was magnified. The subtle sway of my hips, the soft brushing of my hair against my cheeks, the delicate clutch in my trembling hands. The hallway beyond was long and sterile. Lights overhead flickered occasionally, adding to the unease. At the end of the corridor, a figure waited. I didn't recognize them at first, a woman in her late 20s, professional, holding a folder. And then I realized she was part of this, part of the test, part of the trap. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to escape, but the restraints from earlier had left invisible marks on my confidence. I had no choice but to move forward. "Alex," she said softly, almost kindly. Her voice was deceptive, soothing in a way that made my skin crawl. "It's okay. Just follow instructions." I nodded, though my throat was dry, my voice non-existent. The fake calm in her tone did nothing to soothe the storm inside me. She guided me to a small room with a mirror, cameras discreetly mounted in corners.
"Act as her," she said.
"Behave naturally." "Her," I whispered, my own voice trembling. I'm not her." "Sure," she interrupted, almost kindly, almost cruelly. "You will be, or you will fail." I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a shuddering breath. This was it. No longer just fabric and makeup. No longer just a forced disguise. I was stepping fully into an identity I hadn't chosen, one that had been thrust upon me with no warning, no control, and no escape. My heartbeat raced with a mixture of fear and forbidden thrill. The first interaction was simple, deceptively so, a conversation with a stranger through a two-way screen. I was to introduce myself as her, respond naturally, smile politely, laugh softly. But even the simplest gestures felt monumental. My hands shook as I touched the clutch, lifted my chin, forced a soft, steady voice. Every hesitation, every slip, felt like it would be exposed, like the truth of who I had been would erupt in an uncontrollable wave. "Good," the woman said after I managed to navigate the introduction. "Now for the next stage." The next stage was worse. A full walk through a simulated street scene, complete with actors who would provoke, question, or challenge me. My heels clicked on the artificial pavement. People laughed, made comments, glanced at me in ways that made my stomach flip. My reflection in the large mirrored wall to my left amplified every movement, every tremor, every sign of vulnerability. One actor stepped closer than necessary. "Nice outfit," he said, voice teasing. "Are you sure you should be out here like this?" Heat flooded my face. Panic surged. I faltered in my step. My heart raced as I tried to smile, to respond gracefully, but the words caught in my throat. My entire identity felt like it was splitting apart. Alex struggling beneath the surface, her fragile persona forced forward, trembling and raw. The woman behind the mirror observed silently, noting every hesitation, every nuance. "Focus," she said sharply, though her lips curved slightly in approval. "You can do this." I took another breath, forcing myself to move. Each step became a test of endurance, every gesture a battle between terror and a twisted, intoxicating thrill. My mind spun. This isn't me. I'm Alex. I'm Alex. But I'm her? Then came the first true obstacle, a spill. My clutch slipped from my hands, tumbling to the floor with a loud crash. I froze, mortified. All eyes seemed to turn toward me. Panic surged, my face burning, legs trembling. My instincts screamed to drop the act, to flee, to tear off the clothes and run. But I couldn't. I had been pushed too far into this identity to retreat now. I bent carefully, knees wobbling in the heels, heart in my throat. As I picked up the clutch, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror again. My fingers brushed the delicate fabric, my lips parted slightly, and I saw beauty. Fragile, trembling beauty. And a horrifying realization. I was beginning to understand what it meant to live in this body, to move in this persona, to be forced into this life. The woman behind the mirror stepped forward. "Excellent," she said. "You recovered. That's progress. But the next challenge will test you further." I barely registered her words. My pulse still roared in my ears. My reflection, soft, delicate, fragile, haunted me. And then the worst part came, a live scenario designed to test my emotional limits. Actors created a situation, a confrontation, an accusation. Someone brushed against me deliberately, another commented on my appearance, and suddenly I was alone in the spotlight. Every instinct screamed to run, but I had no choice. I had to maintain composure. My hands shook, my legs quivered, but I forced a calm, polite voice. Every breath, every movement was a tightrope walk over a chasm of terror. And then the mirror cracked. A small hairline fracture appeared in the reflection, distorting my face. Panic flooded me. Was it the mirror? Was it real? My mind screamed, "This isn't real. It can't be real." But the fear was undeniable. The actors pressed on. The woman behind the mirror observed, and I realized, with a sinking feeling, that nothing in this room was normal anymore. I had crossed a line. I had been forced into someone else's body, someone else's identity, and now every step, every breath, every glance was a test of endurance, of submission, of survival. The exhilaration of cross-dressing, the thrill I had once cherished in secret, had been transformed into raw, terrifying, inescapable reality. By the time the session ended, I was trembling, soaked in sweat, mentally and emotionally exhausted. I had survived, technically, but at what cost? My reflection, delicate and feminine, stared back at me, but Alex, the man I had been, was barely recognizable beneath the surface. And then the voice came again, calm, deliberate, almost cruel. "Tomorrow, the real world awaits, and you will go into it as her." The weight of those words settled over me like a storm. I realized with absolute clarity, there was no escape. My life as Alex was over. The fragile, trembling persona I had been forced to inhabit would follow me everywhere. Every step, every interaction, every glance in a mirror would be a test, a reminder of what I had lost and what I was becoming. And yet a small, forbidden thrill lingered, twisting with the fear. I had been pushed further than I had ever dared to go. I was terrified, humiliated, and utterly, irreversibly transformed. The van ride back was silent, the hum of the engine filling the space as my mind replayed every moment of the day. My legs ached from the heels, my fingers still trembled from the clutch and accessories, and my heart felt raw from the relentless barrage of challenges. I stared at my reflection in the tinted window, barely recognizing the delicate, trembling face staring back. Every curve, every feature, every detail had been forced onto me, and yet I couldn't deny the strange thrill that lingered beneath the terror. "Tomorrow," the voice said softly from the front seat, almost casual, "you will meet the world, and they will only see her." The words made my stomach drop. The world. Outside. Real people. No controlled simulations, no actors, no cameras, just me, my new identity, and everyone else. Panic flared, and my pulse raced uncontrollably. Could I survive it? Could I maintain the persona under scrutiny, under judgment, under the unrelenting eyes of strangers? The van stopped in front of a building I didn't recognize. Concrete, imposing, almost fortress-like. The doors opened, and the figure who had orchestrated my day gestured for me to exit. My heels clicked sharply against the cold ground. Every step was heavy with dread. The air outside smelled different, fresher, but somehow sharper, filled with possibility and threat all at once. "You're ready," the voice said, almost a whisper, but I could hear the weight behind it. "Ready or not, there's no going back." I tried to speak, to ask questions, to demand answers, but nothing came out. My throat was tight. My hands clutched the small purse tightly, the soft fabric of the skirt brushing against my legs, reminding me of my vulnerability. My reflection in the nearby glass door startled me. It was her, the persona I had been forced into, fragile, beautiful, and utterly exposed. Then the doors opened wider, and someone stepped out. A woman, tall and confident, her eyes narrowing as they landed on me. She paused, studying me with an intensity that made my pulse spike. There was recognition in her gaze, perhaps not of who I was before, but of the unnatural perfection I had been forced into. I froze, unsure if I should run, stay, or pretend. "Alex." The word, soft but sharp, cut through me like a knife. I spun toward the voice, my heart nearly stopping. It was Mia. She had come early. Her expression was unreadable, confusion, suspicion, something darker lurking beneath the surface. My breath caught. Every instinct screamed danger. Every muscle tensed as I tried to think, to plan, to revert, but it was too late. The heels felt heavier than ever, the skirt tighter, the makeup impossibly permanent. I couldn't hide. I couldn't escape. My secret life, my forced transformation, my trembling identity, all of it was laid bare in front of the one person who mattered most to me. Mia took a step closer. What are you doing?" Her voice wavered between shock and disbelief. Who are you?" The words were a hammer to my chest. I wanted to explain, to confess, to justify, but no explanation could bridge the gap between Alex and the fragile, trembling figure standing before her. I was caught, exposed, and utterly powerless. Behind me, the orchestrator of my day remained silent, almost invisible, watching the interaction with clinical interest. It was clear this was another test, another challenge, another moment designed to push me further into the persona I had been forced to inhabit. My mind raced. Could I run? Could I hide? Or was it too late? Already too far gone? The fear clawed at my chest, twisting with the remnants of a thrill I could barely comprehend. Every instinct screamed to flee. Every emotion demanded surrender, and somewhere deep inside, I realized I couldn't control what was coming next. Mia's eyes narrowed, and the air between us became electric, charged with tension, fear, and unspoken questions. She took another step, her gaze locked onto mine, her voice barely a whisper. "You need to tell me everything." And in that moment, I knew the truth. Everything was about to change. My secret, my forced transformation, my fragile new identity, everything teetered on the edge of revelation. One wrong word, one hesitation, one faltering step, and it could all collapse. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The van behind me, the orchestrator, Mia, everyone watched. And for the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about clothes, makeup, or heels. This was about control, identity, and survival. And then, the screen of a nearby phone lit up, a notification that froze me in place. The message wasn't from Mia. It wasn't from me. It was from someone else, someone who knew everything. She's out. Don't let her slip away. My blood ran cold. The world had just become infinitely more dangerous, infinitely more unpredictable. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The van's doors remained open behind me, Mia's gaze locked on my trembling face, the orchestrator silent, and my reflection in the glass fractured by the morning light. I was trapped, caught between fear and thrill, exposure and secrecy, identity and transformation. And as I stood there, heart hammering, palms sweaty, and legs trembling in the unfamiliar heels, I realized one terrifying truth. The real nightmare was just beginning.